Have you ever wondered why some people learn faster, remember longer, and move ahead with ease while the more you try, the more exhausted you feel? Why the same amount of time leads to growth for some, but frustration for others? The truth is, the problem isn't intelligence, and it isn't effort. The real issue lies in how you're using your brain. In this video, we'll break down the biggest myths about learning and personal growth through the lens of neuroscience, psychology, and modern life skills. No empty motivation. No try harder advice. Instead, we'll explore real principles that help your brain learn faster, retain information deeper, and function more effectively in everyday life. This is not a video for people chasing cheap shortcuts. This is a journey for those who want to understand first, then grow far. For those who want to improve themselves without burning out in the process. If learning feels stressful, discipline feels heavy, and self-development feels like a constant struggle, this video was made for you. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay until the very end. Because one idea you hear today might completely change how you learn, how you live, and how you move forward in the years ahead. We've been taught that effective learning means memorizing more, repeating longer, and blaming a lack of discipline when we forget. But neuroscience reveals a very different truth. The brain was never designed for cramming. It was designed to recognize patterns, create meaning, and conserve energy. When you memorize mechanically, the brain treats information as temporary and quickly discards it. When you learn the right way, the brain naturally stores that information in long-term memory without force. Learning faster doesn't mean learning more. It means learning the way your brain is wired to learn. The brain learns best when it feels moderately safe, genuinely curious, and appropriately challenged. It remembers deeply when information is connected to emotion, context, and experience. Not when you force yourself to sit still and repeat the same page over and over. That's why you can vividly remember a story you heard once, yet forget what you studied an hour ago. The problem isn't your ability, it's the method you're using. Once you understand this, you realize that tools like flashcards or repetition aren't inherently wrong, but they're primitive if used without understanding context. The brain thrives on variation, switching, multisensory input, and properly timed rest. When you begin working with your brain instead of against it, learning speed increases naturally, memory becomes more flexible, and studying stops feeling like a draining battle. Learning then transforms from a burden into a smart, effortless, and sustainable process. Once you understand that the brain does not learn through force but through optimizing its natural biological states, the next step is not to study more, but to activate the learning mechanisms that already exist within you. The 6 techniques introduced are not magical tricks or secret rituals. They are simply ways of working with processes the brain has relied on for millions of years. The difference lies in intention. Instead of letting the brain operate unconsciously, you begin to cooperate with it deliberately. The first technique, sleep learning, is not about absorbing brand new information while you are deeply asleep. It is about using the transitional state between wakefulness and sleep, a moment when the brain's critical filters soften and receptivity increases. In this state, the brain does not argue, resist, or question whether something is worth remembering. It simply registers. When you replay material you studied earlier during this phase, the brain tends to reinforce the neural connections already formed. The power of this method lies not in volume, but in gentle, consistent repetition without pressure. When used correctly, sleep becomes not a break from learning, but a powerful extension of deep consolidation. Neuropriming, or learning in chaos, challenges one of the most ingrained beliefs about studying, that silence is essential. From an early age, we are told that focus requires perfect quiet, yet the brain does not evolve in controlled environments. Life is noisy, unpredictable, and full of interruptions. When you only study under ideal conditions, your brain becomes fragile, easily disrupted by minor distractions. Training in mildly chaotic but controlled environments teaches the brain to prioritize, filter, and maintain focus despite external noise. Over time, concentration becomes an internal skill rather than something dependent on surroundings. For people who struggle with distraction, this shift is transformative, because instead of fighting the environment, they learn to neutralize its impact. The 5-sense memory technique is grounded in a simple truth. Memory does not exist in isolation. It is inseparable from sensory experience. Smell, sound, color, and touch have direct pathways to deep memory centers in the brain. When you rely only on text, you activate a single processing channel. When you pair learning with a specific scent, background music, or color, you create multiple access points to the same information. This makes recall faster, more accurate, and less mentally demanding. Consistency is critical. When the same sensory cue is paired with the same type of content, the brain forms clear associations rather than confusion. The memory palace method remains powerful because it leverages the brain's exceptional spatial memory. Humans remember locations, routes, and environments far better than abstract facts. By attaching information to familiar spaces, rooms, doorways, furniture, everyday objects, you eliminate the need to memorize in the traditional sense. The brain simply retrieves information by mentally navigating space. Its greatest strength is automation. Every time you pass a familiar location, the associated memory is subtly reactivated, reinforcing learning without conscious effort. Interleaving, or studying in 10-minute rotations, breaks linear learning patterns. The brain's processing efficiency declines when it remains on the same task for too long. By switching topics at short intervals, you force the brain to reset attention, shift context, and search for connections between ideas. This creates a flexible knowledge network rather than isolated mental compartments. While this method can feel uncomfortable at first, that discomfort signals deep learning in action. Finally, the 4-week SPY-style learning plan is not a rigid schedule, but a structured progression. Each week emphasizes a different group of techniques, allowing the brain to adapt before layering additional methods. This prevents overload and helps you clearly observe changes in focus, memory, and cognitive stamina. Instead of attempting total transformation at once, you allow the brain to evolve step by step in alignment with its natural operating system. What unites all these techniques is that they do not require you to become someone else. They do not demand extraordinary willpower or relentless discipline. They simply ask you to understand how your brain works and to create conditions where it can perform optimally. At that point, learning stops being a battle against yourself and becomes a smart collaboration, one where every effort is efficiently rewarded by the brain itself. The most beautiful truth is this: effective learning does not require extreme effort, sleepless nights, or turning yourself into a human memorization machine. In fact, true learning begins the moment you stop forcing yourself and start giving your brain the conditions it naturally thrives in. When your brain is stimulated the right way through emotion, curiosity, the right environment, and a stable biological rhythm, it learns fast, remembers deeply, and works with you, not against you. Those magical aha moments, when something finally clicks after being confusing for so long, don't come from grinding harder. They come from natural neural connections falling into place, and in that state, learning feels almost effortless, not because it isn't challenging, but because it no longer feels like a battle. Think about those times you learned something you were genuinely excited about. You lost track of time, didn't feel tired, and didn't need anyone to tell you to push harder. That is the easy mode. Not because it's truly easy, but because it aligns with how your brain wants to learn. When you begin entering that state more often, you realize learning isn't a burden. It's a biological instinct just waiting to be activated the right way. In the end, you don't need to become perfect to be a great learner. You don't need extreme discipline, superhuman intelligence, or constant hustle. What you really need is a clear understanding of how your brain actually works and a little patience to rebuild your learning habits in a smarter, gentler, and more sustainable way. We live in an era where information is everywhere, but true understanding is rare. This channel doesn't exist to turn you into a memorizing machine. It exists to walk with you on your journey of becoming a better version of yourself. No pressure, no comparison, just you, growing, every single day. If something in this video sparks something inside you, if you want to learn more effectively without sacrificing your mental well-being, if you're looking for a learning community that's honest, intelligent, and human, hit that subscribe button today. And don't forget to ring the bell so you won't miss what's coming next. We'll keep diving into fascinating, science-based learning techniques that actually fit into your life. We won't promise to make you a genius in 7 days, but if you stay with us long enough, you'll start to see a version of yourself that's calmer, clearer, and more confident. And that is the most powerful transformation of all.